So welcome everybody back to our next class on a revelation to Patricia. Tonight we're going to be starting on the fourth and final part of the book. In the first part of the book, we kind of introduced the message and how God has a message for us. In the second part of the book, we showed how God opens our eyes to some of the horrible ways that we treat each other and the pain that causes. In the third part, we talked about the beasts of imperialism and domination, and the lamb, and how the lamb is the opposite of the beasts, and comparing the two, and kind of the fight between the dragon and the beast on one side and the lamb of Jesus on the other, and how we can turn around from following the beastly ways to following the lamb. So then we get into the fourth part of the revelation. Let me share my screen here. So in the fourth and final part, it describes the wondrous beauty of Jesus's community and the possible image of heaven here on earth. I believe that heaven and hell are not physical locations, but they're states of being. We have a choice of whether we want to create hell or heaven for ourselves and for one another. God's message shows us the way to leave hell behind us and manifest heaven instead. So this final series of 7 chapters that is coming up will describe the visions of heaven, what heaven on earth could look like. First here, we're going to talk a little bit about the hell on earth that we create and the heaven on earth that we could create instead. So this first chapter is just kind of the intro to this fourth part. This chapter tells us how God's discernment to direct our behaviors can affect whether or not we live within the fire of hell. Heaven and hell are eternal, and since they have no beginning and no end, they can't possibly start sometime later. They already exist. They both exist right now, right here. And we can choose each moment in which realm we will live. If we live by domination and materialism and greed and objectification and apathy and vengeance, then we will live in the filthy, disgusting mess we created. We can choose instead to have our lives defined by love, service, truth, forgiveness, affirming relationship, compassion, grace, and mercy, and we will live in the glory that we create. Many people flee from God, assuming that God wishes us harm. When we turn away from the way God has shown us to live, we cause ourselves endless pain and grief and throw ourselves into hell. But God pulls us out of hell, and God calls us back to God. God does away with hell and gives us his discernment and guidance and shows us the beauty within each one of us and in all of those around us. The gates of hell are open, and we can walk out of hell and walk back to God. We can put an end to hell if we stop creating hell for one another. Ed, do you have a Google ready that you can read for us Revelation 20:11?
Revelation 20, verse 11?
Yes. And as he's reading that, I want you to listen for any threats that come from there.
Just verse 11?
Yes.
Okay. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. The earth and the heavens fled from his presence, and there was no place for them.
Mm-hmm. So there's this white throne of the glory of God, and people fled from it. There was no threat. We just fled because we were afraid. So where do we go when we flee from God? And is the place we flee to better than being with God?
We go into the whale like Jonah.
Have any of you ever run from God, and was the place you ran to better?
It wasn't any better. It wasn't better. No, it was wrong. It was horrible. It was awful. Without God, that was horrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this passage, a lot of times it's taken as something bad happening, but God isn't threatening anything. People were just fleeing because we were afraid.
Mhm.
So Ed, can you read Revelation 20:14?
Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death.
Mm-hmm. So Hades is another word for hell. So death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. Where did hell go in this passage?
Isn't it the same?
Yeah, hell went away. It got cast in the lake of fire.
Hmm.
And it says that the lake of fire is the second death. So what do you think it could mean metaphorically for death and hell to be thrown into a second death? What is the death of death? What is the death of hell?
Well, it kind of cancels itself out and becomes nothing.
Mhm. And my next
Like a
question,
fire that burns itself out. It's kind of just empty at that point.
exactly. So would hell die if we stopped creating it?
Yeah.
Well, if we stopped repaying violence for violence and eye for an eye, going back to the Old Testament.
Can you go on to read 20:15, the next verse?
Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire.
Mhm. So first we threw hell and death into the lake of fire, or the second death. But then it goes on to say that anyone who is not living according to God is also thrown into this lake of fire, or the second death. But can you read that again? 2015. Did God throw people into the fire?
It says
No.
anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. This is NIV.
Yeah, so it doesn't say that God threw people into the lake of fire. God's not punishing us for not following. Only that
Right.
people were thrown into the fire. So is it possible that the misery we cause ourselves through our beastly actions is metaphorically like throwing ourselves into the lake of fire? What pain do we
Yes.
cause ourselves by our selfishness? What pain do we cause ourselves by our lack of love? What pain do we cause ourselves by ignoring truth? What pain do we cause ourselves by stepping out of the responsibilities and benefits of community? This hell that we throw ourselves and each other into, can we put an end to it? What would it mean to stop throwing ourselves into the lake of fire, into the second death? Ourselves and the people around us.
What is the saying? I think Einstein, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for something to be different. Sometimes simply people don't know what to do. They don't know they have options because they're caught up, each of us can be caught up in our own drama. And I think just by reaching out to others, listening to your inner voice, listening to people you care about, we will get some guidance, sometimes subtle. Sometimes the universe says, I'm going to transform, you have to change. But I have compassion for people because sometimes they just don't know there are other options. Well, I remember earlier in previous groups, you said, if you can see these teachings as instructions how to live instead of punishment for being the way you are, life is a lot easier.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, God isn't telling us these things to punish us. God is trying to make our lives easier. He's trying to show us the good thing, the good way we could live. But first showing us, yeah, go ahead.
And if we follow that guidance, God's guidance, then we have no reason to go back and punish each other, because God's not punishing us. We're
Right.
doing it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
God's not sending us to hell. God's pulling us out of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And
I
that
also,
tracks the rest of everything that Jesus taught too.
John?
I also think about people who become abusive. I don't think anybody wants to be abusive, but in their desperation to do something, they cause more chaos. But so it's a lesson to learn to act out differently.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, so that chapter, I mean, it talks about the casting people into the lake of fire and the second death, but it also says that we can throw hell into this lake of fire and second death. We can stop it. We can put put death to death, put hell to death, and stop it.
Yep.
So if we go on to the next section. Not only can we step out of hell, but we can step into heaven. This chapter talks about how God desires for us to experience heaven with God. It describes the heaven that we can create by improving our behaviors. Jesus's true message has very little to do with living in a mystical heaven after we die. In fact, when Jesus's followers questioned Jesus about the afterlife, in 3 of the Gospels, Mark 12, 18 through 27, Matthew 22, 23 through 33, and Luke 20, 27 through 40, all 3 of those Gospel writers recant this story where the followers were asking Jesus, what happens after we die? What happens in the afterlife? And Jesus's response was that he's the God of the living, not of the dead. Jesus's message is about how we create heaven here on earth by creating the community that God desires for us. A community where we are no longer separated from one another and finally live together as one community of God's beloved children. We can experience what it's like to be with God, and God will guide us and comfort us on our way. So Ed, can you read Revelation 21:1?
Give me 1 second. And then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea.
So again, if you're taking this whole book as one of destruction, and it says, heaven and earth are gone, it sounds like they've been destroyed and they're gone. But I believe this is talking about our understanding of heaven and earth being turned around. It's an ending to that understanding of heaven as being some mystical place that's far off, that's in the clouds. And so ending that idea of heaven and a new one taking its place. So, what's the difference between how we act and behave if we understand heaven to be someplace in the clouds that we go to after we die, that has golden streets and ivory towers, or how does that compare to an understanding of heaven as being a heaven on earth that we create by being kind to one another?
Well,
So
for me,
Yeah. Go
Heaven
ahead.
on Earth was on Thanksgiving Day, and just looking at the people that were fed, that was for a minute. You know, it was pretty stressful to get it all together, but for that minute, it was heaven because I saw happiness on
Yeah.
the old people's faces, and
Yeah.
they were fed.
I liked when she said it was for that moment, for that
Mm.
minute. You know, I can imagine sitting by a stream and all of a sudden everything is, all I hear is the water, everything's background. Or I'm holding someone and the whole world has just disappeared. Or I taste sizzling shrimp and my eyes roll into my head and everything is just gone. But each of those minutes, each of them are heavenly.
Definitely. So how does receiving love make you feel? How does giving love make you feel? How does showing compassion make you feel? How does achieving peace make you feel? How does offering forgiveness make you feel? How does reaching an understanding with someone make you feel? How does standing up for truth make you feel? And how does standing up for justice make you feel? And how do those feelings compare to living in a palace with golden stairs and an ivory gate?
Well, I would say it's very fulfilling. Like, hey, this is what I'm born to do. This is what I'm meant to do. Because there's harmony in my heart and there's balance in my life. And it's the best thing.
You know, sometimes I think that there are those places where words fail us. And I think the golden palaces and all that is one of those things where it's maybe a people of a certain time, maybe from a previous time. We're trying to put into words something that tried to approximate something that's very difficult to put into words. And so I think that what they were trying to get to is exactly what you said. How does giving and receiving love, showing compassion, offer forgiveness, understanding, standing up for truth and justice, and all those other things gets you to that feeling of being in a golden palace. So I'm just wondering, I mean, you've studied this, you know, more than I have, but I'm kind of wondering that now.
Yeah, when they go ahead.
A lot of the stuff you said simply makes me feel good. I could be sitting on a golden toilet. You know, and if it's a good dump, that's a good feeling. But a golden toilet doesn't give me anything than a regular porcelain toilet would. But those other simple things, a kind look, a sweet gift, somebody opens a door, those all feel exquisitely good. And even though they're fleeting, the feeling can remain. Actually, studies have shown that when there's something that feels good, it can affect us for weeks. And so if you're always exposing yourself to things are nourishing, good for you, thank God you're getting a steady meal of goodness.
I always, whether I know them or not, wherever I go, it's hard to make contact because you have a mask on.
Right.
But I always say hello, have a nice day, and you can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
And so many of people will turn around and say, oh my God, thank you. It's easy. And it makes me feel good too.
Yes. It's not a chore to do good things for people. It feels good.
Exactly. Exactly.
I've had an experience with a new meeting I'm going to at 8 o'clock every morning. My sponsor goes. And it's called a double winners meeting. And I'm new to the group. And they're just so loving, welcoming, you know, calling on me so I can share some of my thoughts. And, you know, it's just easy to love this group. And, you know, they'll ask me, how's your arm, somebody? And a bunch of us stay after because we're musicians and we just want to talk music. And, you know, there's just it's comforting to me and loving. And I just love it. You know, it just makes me feel part of, and it makes me, I for the longest time, I couldn't get up to go to that meeting. And now I just run to that meeting. I mean, what a gift. First thing in the morning, you know, besides my prayer work and meditation, I get to be with these people. And yeah, and so we're learning about each other, and there's just a lot of love and comfort there, and some laughter, which I love. So it's new, you know, like I'm the new kid on the block. And yeah, it's just like, wow, when you least expect it, and I'm just soaking it up. You know, and I'm complimenting them too, but it's sincere. It's not just, you know, saying it to be one of the group. So
yeah.
So
yeah, the connections and the community and the laughter and the love and compassion and sharing, to me, that's heaven.
Amen.
And that's
And it
already here.
works.
We can create
Yeah.
it. It's not always here, like John keeps saying, the moments are fleeting, they come and go. But we have the power to create more and more of those moments. So if we go on then to the next
Well,
chapter.
the way that we create those
Okay.
moments is by doing all those things.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
Right.
that's it.
It's not a magic thing that happens to us. It's magical guidance, sort of.
And
God has
you
given us the
shouldn't
key.
feel like you're being forced to do it, because
Exactly.
that's not the same thing.
Right. And I think that's why God never forces us to follow, because then we lose the benefit of following.
Yeah.
So the next chapter is it's the kind of the end of the intro to this fourth part, where we're going to get into the visions of 7 visions of heaven. But this last part of the intro, this chapter shows that we can choose to create heaven or hell by our actions in our lives. Jesus shows us a better way to live our lives. His guidance is trustworthy and true. If you overcome your ungodly temptations, you will inherit the living water of God's love and parental guidance. If you choose to not follow that guidance, you will miss out on all the comfort and joy that you could have had. But heaven is not a destination. It is the journey. We can spend each moment of our journey walking with God or not. God sees the struggles and the potential in each of us, and all is never lost. God calls to us wherever we are and beckons us to move toward God. God keeps calling us into community with God and with one another. God doesn't give up on us. God keeps calling us to turn around and follow the guidance that God has lovingly provided for us. And I just shared this loving, beautiful passage that I got from this next part of the book. But Ed, can you read Revelation 21:8?
21:8.
Mhm.
But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magical arts, the idolaters, and all the liars, they will be consigned to the higher fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death.
Mhm. So it says those who live according to the beast will burn in the fire of spiritual death. But we just talked about in an earlier section that we could put hell to death. We could throw death and hell into this fiery pit and end it. What type of world do we create when we live in a way that's not the way God has guided us to live? And who has to live in that world?
Well, I think about how a lot of people have been mentioning this last week about, especially this new COVID variant has come up, and about how some countries like some parts of South Asia and South Africa and other places that are poorer don't have the immunizations. And I thought, it's kind of like a choice. This is exactly what you're talking about, I think, where we have extra and we could give it to them. In fact, we have some people don't even want to take it, and they have people that want to take it, can't get access. And even someone in Philippines last night was just telling me they have quarantine. You're not supposed to be out past 10 p.m. because a lot of people can't even get the vaccine there yet.
Mhm.
And it's been
Wow.
a year since many of us have gotten it,
Yeah.
near the beginning of this year. So that's kind of like we follow God and we do for our fellow people or not. And we either create it or we don't.
Mhm.
And there's a kind of a concrete example comes to mind.
Yeah. If you look at vaccination rates around the world, you can see that Africa especially is really low. The rest of the world has pretty high vaccination rates, but they're not getting their vaccines in Africa. And so this new variant started in Africa because it's spreading faster because fewer people are vaccinated. We've always said that getting your vaccination slows down the spread, which slows down the creation of variants. Well, because they don't have the vaccines in Africa, a new variant popped up because it had time to mutate. And it's going to come back here. People fly. And we said, we'll just stop all the flights from Africa, except that it's already gotten to Europe. It's already gotten to Canada.
It's already here.
Yeah.
It's already here. And then we're going to pass it around. And if we had the compassion to help the others, it would have helped us too.
Right. But we're going to keep having that problem until people do what needs to be done
Mm-hmm.
to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we choose to walk with God, that doesn't mean everyone has. Other people will still treat us poorly, and it will hurt. How do we respond when we're hurt? Do you respond in kind and summon the beast within yourself? Or do you stay in a state of mind that puts love of others first and searches for more goodness to add to your life? And which response will create a better outcome in your life?
That's a
We
hard
just
one.
have, yeah. I mean, we need to love one another, no matter who it is.
Mhm.
And I feel like if I see somebody or just feel like something's going on with that person, if I turn my back on them and walk away, what good did that make it? And I am the one that's caused that problem.
Sometimes we have to protect ourselves.
Right.
though,
Sometimes we
Well,
have to
yeah.
walk away.
You know,
Yeah.
what I've learned to do through my program is when someone hurts us, we write out every day for 2 weeks that we wish them all the love, peace, happiness in the world, and sign it. And it really does help,
Mhm.
you know, because you're thinking of them and you're thinking positive, but it also helps you. Because who wants to be angry and resentful? I mean, that doesn't work, like everyone's been saying. So I use that tool. I've used it a few times, you know, a lot. But especially if I feel hurt. And then, you know, I'm told sometimes that I take things too personally. But I'm who I am, and I've worked really hard on myself. So yeah, I mean, I'd rather I didn't, but I don't consciously get all hurt and whacked out. I don't get whacked out. I get hurt. And then it's again the action. You know, I can write this thing out for 14 days and it seems to help. You know, me, I don't, you know, and hopefully somehow it helps them. So anyway, that's what I got.
Yeah.
That's my story.
Wishing that someone get healing for whatever bad behavior they're exhibiting doesn't mean that you're continuing to give them access to you or to keep doing the thing. It just means that you don't have to growl back.
Right.
I was thinking about desire. Actually, I was thinking about needs and wants and desires. Uh, uh, Temptation is wonderful. It's very seductive. Might bring in power, might bring in money, might bring in prestige. But it doesn't help everyone. It's just greedy. And again, it doesn't last because to me, it's superficial. But desiring things of true value, of feeling the love of a person or loving somebody or doing an act of kindness or having eye contact with someone, all of those, again, very precious, and they bring value that can't be lost. I mean, it's just, it's something that, oh, this is just I come together with another person and they come together at that moment, something is exchanged. And I mean, the odds of us just meeting are amazing, and to have something astonishing happens are amazing. So it's an incredible blessing when something happens, and really the things of true value I see as really sacred.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, you know, it's nice to cultivate the sacred.
And those are things that, like you said, nobody can take from you. They're not going to rust. They're not going to get stolen because they're moments that you create. They're moments that come from inside of you. And you can create more of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't tell anybody about the Thanksgiving. For all they know, that they got their turkeys from the same people that usually do it. We didn't say, you know, we did it last minute, and Penny had such a hard time because she's running from house to house to do it, and
We
didn't.
had 3 turkeys and we had to find ovens to cook them in.
Yeah, we were doing all that, and it felt really good. And we didn't, you know, stand at the podium and say, okay, you guys are Trumpers, don't come in, or you guys are this, don't come in. We fed everybody, and we didn't tell people that we fed them, but it
No.
felt like a really heavenly moment
Yeah, it felt good to
do it.
to put into practice the things that we've been
Yes.
talking about, you know, and that everyone was welcome.
Too.
The table, yeah, we made sure that it was a feast and everyone was welcome. And just today, someone was telling me how much they really enjoyed it. One of the people asked to help out, you know, and he said, "Wait, we really had such a good time. That was such a..."
Those are the moments. Those are
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, Penny even bought Ziploc bags so that they could, these people don't cook for themselves. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
she gave them little like bag takeaways
Mhm.
and they were great. They were loved.
So we'd go from dish to dish to dish, and we'd put like 2 or 3 bags of cranberry sauce, and then 2 or 3 bags of celery, and then 2 or 3 bags of olives, and just everything we could, the turkey, the gravy, and that way all the food got taken home, and it was easy, and everybody loved it because there hasn't been that much food before. So it just gave us leftovers, and we
Mhm.
decided that we wanted to have leftovers too.
Yeah.
So everybody had a blast.
I love doing that.
It
And
was
if
a
you do
blessing.
that stuff as a chore, hoping to get some reward after you die, you miss the reward. You
Yep.
you had it. It was there. That moment, that feeling, that joy, that peace, that connection with other people.
Yeah, there was
Exactly.
that sweetness in the moment that was just wonderful. And I always wanted to be on that side of that. I always wanted to be there where I was able to
Mhm.
do it. And even when I was running around and talking to people and just trying to find people, I'm like, well, who else has an oven, or who else has this? I wasn't panicking.
Mhm.
I just know I had a time frame and I was trying to get everything done. And I
Mhm.
went through. And one guy said, could you find the tables and set up the room? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, there's no list. Nobody's taken the job. He goes, don't worry, I can handle it. And I'm like, well, music to my ears, music I don't have to think about this one anymore. You'll handle it. It was just, I was going like, God, this is awesome. Thank you.
When Pastor Pat was preacher in Albuquerque, we had a sister church not too far from us. And every year, because the other church had the facility to have warmers and, people bringing in a lot of food. And I just loved it, to talk to the
Yeah.
people and make them
Oh,
feel
yeah.
good. And that's the kind of stuff that I miss being able to do,
Oh,
because there's
yeah.
no place for me to do it. But it just warms you up, and we take our turns going and sitting down and go sit down with the ones who we're going to eat there and not take something out. You don't know where they're at, what's going on in their life,
Yeah.
but
And this
it
was
feels good.
this was good for me
Yeah.
and Nancy. It was a stretch. And
Yeah.
in the middle of us cooking our turkey, the oven went out because we ran out of gas.
We're making it a tradition now.
Yeah. So I remember I had one more tank full. It was in the barbecue outside. So I ran outside and I grabbed the tank and I went to the back, I hooked it up. And then I come in and Nancy's like turning the burner on the stove and she's like, yeah, we got gas. So the only thing we're thinking is, is the turkey done enough? Will it be done on time? And it was, and I was talking to God the whole time. I'm like, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to panic. I know you can bend time and space. You can make this thing all happen and it'll be cooked and it'll be done and we'll have it all together. And so
yeah,
it was only a half hour late, but we just kind of put the word out that it might
I
be a little
did
late.
I did Thanksgiving dinner in my little apartment in my little tiny kitchen one year. And we had a lot of shut-ins.
Oh, yeah.
And so the coordinator and I got together and people were donating turkeys and everything.
Yeah.
So I cooked turkeys for 3 days prior to Thanksgiving.
Oh my gosh.
And so I went to I had a one person that helped me, which was great. So I got the list of all the shut-ins, which I worked with all of them pretty much, so I knew them. And we started plating stuff, all the turkey dinner, and then we'd take it and give it to those apartments. And I had this one lady that I've known for 5 years of living there, and she hardly ever came out. She was on a walker, and I knocked on her door, and she's on her walker, so it takes a long time. she gets to the door and I said, "This is Deb. Can you open your door?" Took her a little while. She opened up the door and I said, "I have Thanksgiving dinner for you. Would you like to have that?"
Yeah.
And she says, "Really?" She
Yeah.
says, "I've just made myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and that's all I was going to eat."
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Okay,
wonderful.
so she couldn't carry all that in her walker. And I said, "If you would like me to, I'll take it all inside." And then when we got everybody done and waited, we fed ourselves. Then we filled up another plate with all the desserts and went
Oh,
to the
good.
same apartments.
Oh, wow.
And
Oh, great.
every one of them would say, "That is so much food." And I said, "Well, that'll let you eat a few meals when you want to."
Yeah.
And it was just so cool to be able to do that,
Yeah.
to help our, I mean, I like to feed people of all ages, but these were elderly seniors.
Mm.
Sure.
And yeah,
Yeah.
That's
I
heaven on
mean,
earth.
it's
Mhm.
Yeah.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the moments. And we can't get them all the time.
No.
We keep
right,
we keep looking for that point where we reach perfection and all is well. But we're not God and therefore can't
right,
reach perfection. How can we change our
right.
perspective to enjoy the journey, including its ups and its downs along the way? And in what ways is the journey itself fun?
When before we ran out of gas cooking the turkey, either before or right after, Nancy tells me it's time to turn the turkeys. We had 2 turkeys in 1 turkey pan. I don't know how she did it, but their butts were up in the air, their legs were sticking straight up, and their necks were down.
Well, at
Oh,
one point, it
Lord.
was like they were hugging each other in
Yeah.
the oven. That was
But what was really odd about it is it caused the side of the pan to droop. And so while we're trying to exchange their positions, the side of the pan that was drooping was spilling out all of the juice
Mhm.
that had cooked out. So now our house is filled with smoke. And
Oh,
so I go outside and I open the back door, I open the front door, I turn the fan hood on. And we're just trying to open the kitchen windows, we're just trying to deal with it. And we're kind of cracking up about the whole thing, really, because it's like, okay, what else? So then my neighbor calls me, the one who has the 3rd turkey in her oven, and she says her house is filled with smoke. And can I get down there and help her? Because the turkey pan sprung a leak and it was leaking all into her oven.
oh
So
no.
we rescued that turkey and cleaned up it was like, it was funny because it's like, well, I got to get all this stuff done, but then there's all these other little activities that are happening along the way. And
Oh,
but God's teaching me to be better about, keeping a good attitude and
love
making
is love.
yeah. And I
have
was
fun with it. Yeah.
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And I told the girl, I'm so sorry, here you let me use your oven. And what if my turkey do but spill into your oven? I'm so sorry. And she's like, yeah, my house is just filled with smoke. And I'm like, yeah, I could tell. Sorry. But she was good natured about it. So that was good.
But what a time. What
Yeah.
the giving and the conversation with these
Yeah.
different people and
Yeah, it was neat.
I have always fed people. Since I was 17 years old, I have fed
Wow.
people. And where I'm at, I'm working on it for next year. But
I guess
I
we are
miss
too.
that.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah,
you
we'll
do
be
it,
good.
you get addicted.
Yeah, it was good.
And
It was good. We're gonna do Christmas for sure.
yeah. I gotta tell you a good thing that happened. I got this text and it says it came from Amazon and your package will be delivered December 10th. It's like, I didn't order anything.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've been wanting a keyboard. And
Oh.
I used to play a little organ that my grandmother got me when I was like 10 years old.
Mhm.
So Amazon tells me it'll be delivered on the 10th. I didn't
Nice.
order it.
Oh, cool.
That's great.
So I'm going to play this winter and try to learn something.
That
Yeah.
sounds great. Yeah. That sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
I mean,
Hey, you're
I hadn't
Oregon
told,
here.
but I hadn't told anybody. It just boom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
It doesn't even give a name of who sent it.
Yep.
Can-
That's
you know?
beautiful. Yeah.
So you can look for those
So
little moments and you can
I'll
create
be
those little moments.
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
It'll give me something. I love music, so
Mhm.
it's about this big.
Oh, it's a good
And
song.
it's got 61 keys on it. I don't know. I'll see it when it comes.
Mhm.
It's wonderful.
Those little moments are there if we just find them and create them. Like
Yeah.
like Pat was saying in her sermon on Sunday, the hope in the middle of despair. That even
Right.
when things are sad and things are hurting, look for those moments. Look for those little pieces of joy. It's there. It won't necessarily overwhelm your life, but the little moments are worth it.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, here shortly I will have a heater working
Yeah.
thanks to the church.
Yay.
Oh, you.
I was in tears, okay? I'm a crybaby right now.
It's
And I
okay.
just couldn't I kept telling Reverend Pat that I didn't want to take that amount of funds out of the church. Well, she made me understand. And I so okay, you got it finally, right? So
Yeah.
Mhm.
of course I had
You got it.
tears. I've had tears all day long.
Uh,
Good tears, and of course my brother. And it's just been crazy, you know? And so appreciative. I'm so appreciative. The day we'll have to do it virtual, but the day that I get heat in here, we're gonna celebrate some way.
Awesome.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We will.
Because
Let's do it.
I
Yeah.
have 2 layers up here and my other one that I'll put on for and PJs and 2 socks and
Maybe you can take a picture, Deb, like a picture of like a thermostat or something.
I just know that I have to do the layers and I'm still cold. But it's okay. Because you tell me, I went through last winter. You tell me who was with me through all this
Yeah. Yeah.
and letting me stay alive and not freeze to death.
Yeah.
Well, you're God's kid.
That's right. And I won't deny that I get very frustrated. I'm the kind of person that gets up early, starts doing stuff, getting things going. When you're that freaking cold, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
thank you, God, and my church family.
Wonderful.
I just have to get my son-in-law on the ball and get the parts and get it done. And gee, is that my keyboard already?
So
Anyway.
I'm gonna end the
Yeah.
recording for tonight. I just want to remind everybody to look for any more heaven that you can create anywhere along your journey. And next
Amen.
week we'll talk more about the vision of heaven here on earth.
Good.